Hello, and thank you for stopping by the Truth About Cheating channel. At first glance, our family appeared perfect, loving parents, two beautiful daughters, and a cozy home. But one day, coming home unexpectedly early, I witnessed something that shattered my life. My own brother was in bed with my wife. This devastating sight destroyed all the illusions I had about my family and those I loved. Now, I found myself needing to untangle the web of lies and betrayals that had clearly been going on for years. At first, our family seemed perfect, loving parents, two beautiful daughters, and a cozy home. But one day, when I returned home earlier than expected, I saw something that turned my entire world upside down. My brother, in bed with my wife. This horrifying moment destroyed every illusion I had about the people closest to me, and I had no choice but to begin unraveling the years of lies and betrayals that had accumulated behind my back. My wife and I are both 34 years old and have been happily married for 8 years. We've been blessed with two amazing daughters, aged 6 and 8. Our home is ideally located near a lovely outdoor park with an incredible children's play area, where our daughters absolutely love to spend their time. No matter how tired I am after work, I always make an effort to take them there regularly. While they play joyfully, I sit at a picnic bench, savoring every moment. My wife fully supports this routine, knowing that the park helps the kids burn off their extra energy. After their playful adventures at the park, we head home, where our daughters take a refreshing bath and then go straight to bed. It's the perfect way to end our day, bringing us closer together as a family. That day started like any other. I came home from work early, and my brother was visiting to watch a hockey game with me. He had come straight from his job. My daughters were buzzing with excitement, eager for me to take them to the park. But since we had to finish watching the game first, they had to wait a bit. My wife was busy making dinner for the family. Normally, we have dinner after our trip to the park, but since we were going later than usual, she decided to serve dinner beforehand. My brother and I ate while watching the game. It wasn't the first time my brother had come over to watch a game with me. We both cheer for the same team. My brother lives about 30 minutes away, and he visits frequently. Once the game ended, my daughters were ready to go, and we hurried out since it was already getting dark. The park is only a 10-minute walk from our home, and we usually spend 2 hours there. But that day, I told my wife we'd be back in an hour because of how late it was. On the way to the park, my daughters began running ahead. I was about to call out for them to stop when my youngest tripped and bruised her knee. It was just a small scratch, but it was bleeding, so I decided to head home to clean it up. We'd only been gone for about 10 minutes and were just 5 minutes from the house, so I figured my wife would be surprised to see us back so soon. As I approached the house, I was expecting to see that my brother's car had left. After all, the game was over, and dinner was finished. He didn't have any reason to stick around. Plus, his own family was waiting for him at home. But his car was still in the driveway, though I didn't think much of it. Sometimes he falls asleep on the couch after eating. When I got to the door, I noticed it wasn't locked, which was strange. My wife always locks the door as soon as we leave. But when I stepped inside, I could clearly hear what sounded like my wife having sex. I rushed to the bedroom and found my brother on top of her. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They both froze when they saw me, and even though the whole thing lasted just seconds, it felt like an eternity to me. Flashes of memories came rushing through my mind, how my brother had been coming over all this time, and I had no idea that he was having an affair with my wife. In that moment, my whole world came crashing down. I've loved this woman my entire life. Besides my parents, there's no one else I care about more. My brother bolted out of the bedroom, but my wife just stayed there, staring at me. I was too shocked to speak. Looking back, I realize I was in complete shock and reacted differently than most people would. Reality hadn't set in yet, so I just left the room to get the first aid kit for my daughter. After about 30 minutes, I took the girls to the park, even though it was already dark. While I was at the park, my wife called me and said she was sorry. She claimed she was drunk and that my brother had forced himself on her. But I was beyond heartbroken. I love this woman more than anything in the world. But things like this make me believe the world is a terrible place. As soon as I arrived at the park, I sat on the picnic bench while my daughter went off to play. That's when it started to sink in. I began to cry. I called my mom and told her everything I had just witnessed. She was furious with my brother. The betrayal was overwhelming, and I wouldn't wish this kind of pain on anyone. After getting off the phone with my mom, I gathered my kids and headed back home. When we got there, my brother's car was already gone. My wife was nervously sitting on the sofa, waiting for me. I didn't acknowledge her right away because I wanted to put my kids to bed, shielding them from the confrontation that was bound to happen. Once they were tucked in, I calmly sat down on the couch, opposite my wife, and asked her how long the affair with my brother had been going on. She claimed it had only happened once and that my brother had forced himself on her. I wasn't buying her story. My brother isn't the type to be aggressive. I told her to be honest, but she stuck to her story. Even when I mentioned divorce, she kept insisting that he forced himself on her and that she had tried to push him away. At that moment, we hit a deadlock. I didn't want to make any rash decisions. My dad was calling me, probably because my mom had already filled him in, but I wasn't ready to answer. I just felt completely drained and weak. A few hours earlier, I had been sitting with my brother in front of the television while my wife cooked dinner in the kitchen, thinking that life was perfect. But now, I realized it was all a lie, and I didn't even know how long it had been going on. The next day, everything exploded. All the anger I had been holding back came rushing out. I called my brother's wife and told her what I had caught him doing. When I finally spoke to my brother, he tried to tell me he was drunk, despite the fact that we hadn't had a single drink that evening. He wasn't drunk when I left the house, just 10 minutes before I caught him on top of my wife. I knew my wife was lying about my brother forcing himself on her, so I didn't even bother confronting him about that. I ended up calling off work, and it took me a while to feel ready to go back. A few of you asked why I didn't smash my brother's face in. Honestly, it was because I was in shock and didn't know how to react. On top of that, if I had gotten arrested, social services would have been involved in the divorce proceedings, which would have been used against me. I immediately sorted out our bank accounts. I removed my wife from both the kids' trust fund and my own accounts in case she tried to drain them. She has her own account for the money she earns from work, but 2 days after I kicked her out, she did indeed try to empty our shared accounts. Luckily, I had already paid off the bills for the house and cars before all of this unfolded. I went to the doctor to check for STIs just days after everything happened and, thankfully, I was given the all clear. Afterward, I had a long meeting with a team of divorce lawyers to figure out the next steps. The lawyers recommended that I get a DNA test for my daughters, which was incredibly difficult for me to accept. As a computer programmer, I have remote access to both my home computer and my wife's laptop. I had never snooped before, but this time I did. I found out that my dear wife had left herself logged into Facebook, and I stumbled upon message after message of her chatting with other men, exchanging photos, and paying for hotel rooms and meetups. It turns out she had likely been having an affair with more than just my brother and had been doing this for 7 of the 8 years we had been married. She had been messaging other men on Facebook for all that time. I never had any reason to snoop before because I completely trusted her. All of this evidence was given to the lawyers, and there's no going back now. I deleted my Facebook account after her small circle of friends started sending me vile messages, blaming me for ruining her life. When I took the paternity test, the results showed that my oldest daughter isn't mine. I can't even begin to describe how devastated I am. I love my daughter so much, and the grief is overwhelming. The DNA test showed a 0% relationship, which means my brother isn't her father either. There must be a third or even fourth man involved. I can't believe I never suspected her of cheating. I feel so clueless and foolish. I showed my wife the DNA results, and it was clear that she had known all along. I exposed the truth to her parents, too, so now they know she was the one in the wrong. I've filed for divorce, and my soon-to-be ex-wife has signed the papers. I've submitted them, and now I'm preparing for a couple of court dates. This has been an incredibly tough time for me, and I'm anxious about not getting custody of the children I love so deeply. I wish I had never taken the paternity test and found out about my oldest daughter. But now, it doesn't matter. I still love both of my children, and I'm focusing on building a better future for us. My brother and his wife are also getting divorced. Additionally, The DNA test didn't change anything for my brother. He isn't the father of my daughter either. So there's another man out there, but I don't know who. Despite it all, I will continue to raise my daughter and love her as I always have. None of this is her fault, and nothing has changed for me in that regard. Dear listener, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more content.